2013, and we were looking at our final project to complete. And I was approached by Dr. Ian Thompson with the idea of doing some work with Ackee and to also uptake an opportunity to conduct the research at Louisiana State University. So I jumped on board with both, also because the time was going and it made pretty good sense and it was a great opportunity. And we saw that it provided a nice gateway to exploring more information in terms of what is available on Ackee and what can be done with Ackee. However, as the project says, it's a preliminary, it turned out to be a preliminary study because we had a great number of limitations. One of the major one was time to spend at LSU. We had just 3 weeks, so we had to get a lot done and then just to work with the information that was gathered. So what we looked at was the impact of cryogenic freezing on the ascorbic acid content, lipid degradation levels, moisture loss, and color. We blanched Ackee and analyzed those, and we also took a look at Ackee that was not blanched. You may ask, why blanch the Ackee? Because that's normally how Jamaicans prepare their Ackee. You do some cooking and then you then it is stir-fried and consumed. We do know that there are persons who consume the raw Ackee, but the quantities there are much less than persons who consume it as cooked. So we had the benefit of using an HPLC. We utilized the T-bars method as well as oven method for moisture and Hunter technology for color. And we looked at the Ackee at 10 degrees C, minus 10 degrees C, sorry, minus 20 and minus 30, freezing with liquid nitrogen at minus 194 degrees. Okay, so we looked at the samples before we froze them, and afterwards, what we found were there were higher retention outcomes of ascorbic acid content with freezing, especially at 30 degrees C. We had minimal degradation in terms of lipid content across the treatment formats, high moisture loss with all temperatures, and the L value, which speaks to the color intensity, right, were improved at minus 30 degrees C, and the A value and the B value speaks to the color hue, with B being red yellow, not red yellow, sorry, yellow green, and red being for red blue, right? So we found we had a decrease in A values toward the lower temperatures, and basically the same across the board, particularly for minus 10 and minus 30 degrees C with the B values. We indicated the first time around, but I must reiterate here that it is an important non-traditional crop, and we are seeing revenues of over $2,000 US annually. So there is opportunity in looking at freezing the Ackee, especially because of the issues we have with the current exportation methodologies where it is canned and there's a risk for issues with can integrity, as well as because that will create bacterial infections, right? Which are also now impacting sales, not so much as it used to in the 90s because things have improved. But with this method, there is opportunity to have an easier use product and a product that is closer to being fresher. All right, so as we see, 2014 food safety had become more prominent in terms of the food and agricultural industry. We had the US introducing its FSMA and all of that. So with those things in mind, it made sense for us to try to be a little bit proactive and to get into other avenues that we could look at in terms of how we export this particular crop, which is sold widely in the diaspora. We could also have the opportunity to reduce or eliminate through the freezing technology methodology, and to promote, it's promoted by FOA, in developing states, all right, as another method that can be used for food processing. Yeah. All right, I am coming, just give me a moment. So we need to begin new research ways to process this product for ease of transport, as well as improved convenience to our overseas markets. The opportunity to explore the processing methods that will also help to maintain nutritional and sensory attributes of the food, and that was the key thing with this project, right? We had available to us 3 methodologies at LSU: blast freezing, plate freezing, and cryogenic freezing. We chose to use blast freezing. Cryogenic freezing. I feel like I'm asleep. I apologize. All right, so we also looked at the ascorbic acid content, as we said, lipid degradation, moisture content, and color attributes. We found that we know that the product Ackee is high in water content, and it provides up to 55% of weight in lipid content and up to 30 milligrams of vitamin C, which makes it a valuable source of nutrition. Color for Ackee is used as a pulling mechanism in terms of sales. When you go to the market, that is what people are looking at. How the color of the Ackee, is it bright yellow? Is it dull yellow? Is it wrinkled? So appearance matters a lot, right? Okay, for cryogenic freezing, it was chosen because the absorption of heat from the food is very high. We can use liquid nitrogen or liquid or solid carbon dioxide. Liquid nitrogen is more ideal and creates a large temperature gradient with food, giving high rates of freezing and absorbing heat well. It was also the mechanism available to conduct the study, so the timing and the combination were both just right. All right, so our hypothesis statement that was formulated: cryogenic freezing at various temperatures has no significant impact on the nutritional and sensory characteristics of Ackee. We took the aerial of the fruit, so I transported about 50 pounds of Ackee into the US, and we divided them into 4 sets. Set A, blanched and frozen; set B, blanched, not frozen; set C, not blanched and frozen; D, not blanched, not frozen. Only the blanched and the not blanched aerials that were frozen were analyzed before and after freezing for the attributes that we were looking at. Ascorbic acid was measured using HPLC determination, and the retention peak of the reference material showed at about 3 minutes. The degradation of lipid content was measured by spectrophotometry at 530 nanometers using malonaldehyde concentration as reference. That's the T-bars method. Moisture loss was calculated on wet basis from the oven-dried sample, and the lab scan Ackee chromometer was used to complete our color readings. So this is what it basically would have looked like, starting out from the 50 pounds of Ackee. We had 1 set blanched, 1 set not blanched, frozen, not frozen, and then we analyzed at the different temperatures. Okay, so here we have our results table with ascorbic acid, liquid lipid degradation, and moisture and color. So we see that ascorbic acid content, well, let me move to the others first. This is this should be 20 degrees, minus 20 degrees C, sorry about that, right? So we had those. All right, what we found was that ascorbic acid content appeared better preserved in the not blanched samples without much impact from freezing. And the quality measures seemed maintained with freezing. For lipid degradation, that remained relatively constant for not blanched frozen ackee across the selected temperatures. However, there was a noted general decrease for blanched frozen ackee. Lipid degradation also appeared impacted by freezing regardless of the temperature that was selected. For moisture loss, those are relatively constant among the freezing temperatures with higher readings for not blanched samples at minus 20 degrees C and minus 30 degrees C, and they were lower for the blanched samples at all the temperatures, except for frozen samples at minus 30 degrees C. Moisture loss values, although generally high with freezing, did not show much variation across the freezing temperatures, and they were higher in the, just a little bit higher in the not blanched samples. In terms of color, fruit values for lightness, red, green, and yellow-blue hues decreased with freezing in the not blanched formats, more so than in the blanched formats. Right. And so you can see these are the different freezing temperatures. The 10 degrees C was the non-freezing temperature, so to speak. So the others show how cryogenic freezing impacted on ascorbic acid in this table. So I'll just hold it up a moment for you to see. And as you can see, the 2 sets at the top are blanched, and we had 3 sets of not blanched. I confess we lost some samples during the process in terms of those that we had blanched. All right, and this is impact on lipid degradation and impact on moisture, L values, A values, B values. Right. What we concluded is that the samples that were frozen showed minimal changes in the respective attributes measured. However, these were not statistically significant. Samples frozen at minus 30 degrees in some instances, Celsius, in some instances showed less change from the unfrozen samples than samples analyzed at the other temperatures. The minus 30 degrees Celsius samples in more instances appeared to be less adversely impacted overall. There was less moisture loss at minus 40 degrees C, and this indicated improved lipid retention at minus 30. Ascorbic acid quality appears maintained with freezing, and so is color in the ackee that is not blanched. All right. Moisture loss was higher in the not blanched samples, and although generally high with freezing, did not show much variation across freezing temperatures. For color, lightness, red, green, and yellow-blue hues decreased with freezing in the not blanched formats more so than in the blanched formats. Samples that were frozen showed minimal changes in the respective attributes measured. Oh, I read that already. Sorry about that. All right, so I read that already. Going forward, we have opportunity to explore more in terms of impact on temperature and other attributes such as texture and hypoglycemic levels, which was one of the things we wanted to take a look at. However, when we were finished with the blanching of the Ackees, we lost a lot in terms of in terms of being able to measure for texture. So it came out very soft, which I believe I could ascribe to the temperatures at which they were blanched, because we blanched at 70 degrees Celsius. We also have opportunity to assess and compare attributes in the unfrozen samples versus frozen samples a little bit more, and an opportunity to develop suitable packaging to improve versatility and flexibility in transport and consumption of the Ackee. Again, I say thanks to Dr. Satibel, who supervised the project at LSU, to Dr. Wilson Barnaby, and I apologize for that misspelling, who was one of our supervisors, and to Dr. Ian Thompson, who was the idea generator and program coordinator at the time, and the rest of the slides are my references. I will just go back to the beginning, should you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Peart, for that presentation. So I am opening the floor for questions. Let me change my view. Okay, well, sorry for the darkness. Okay, so are there any questions from the audience as it relates to the presentation? Of course, Ackee is very, very crucial. I am not, but my first question was I think there was a figure you spoke about in terms of 2,000 US. I'm not sure if I'm sure that needs to be a modification there. There's something you spoke about 2,000 US, and I'm not sure what that was.
That was on one of the slides. The sales annually in terms of Ackee that is now exported.
2 million to what? Because you had 2,000.
It should be 2,000. Let me check. Should be 2,000 million.
Because I don't know why I recall a 15 million, something like that is what I recall from the last presentation.
Let me check. Okay, yes. Because halfway through I realized that I had something different here, a different
okay.
I have the modified presentation looking at here. Sorry, yes, it is since 2020. 15 million US dollars annually.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay, awesome. Has COVID-19 impacted sales as you may be aware of? I mean, to an extent, or production, or any of those?
No, to confess, I am not sure. I have actually not followed.
Okay, no problem. All right. Are there any questions that anybody in the audience?
Dr. Gallimore? Yes.
Yes, Dr. Maraj.
Paul Maraj here. Ereca, thank you for the talk. Yeah, as we all know, Ackee is very important to us as Jamaicans. Yeah, the question I have is with regards to the lipid degradation.
Yes.
So you're saying that the lipids break down more when you freeze the Ackee?
Yes.
That's the case, right? So how does that affect the taste and hence the quality, the perception of the taste that you are used to when it's boiled before freezing? Yeah.
Well, for the cryogenic freezing itself, I honestly cannot say, simply because we did not do a taste test at that time. But having frozen ackee otherwise. I have vacuum sealed and frozen it here at home after blanching and before blanching, and I have cooked both, and there was not a major difference in the taste.
Well,
So I don't expect that there would be.
On my side, when I freeze and then blanch it, there's a distinct difference in the taste, you know?
You
There's
freeze
a more
and blanch.
sour taste. Well,
Okay.
I usually don't freeze and blanch. I blanch first before freezing, since
Okay.
I've realized that when I freeze first and then blanch, you get that kind of off taste, an unusual taste.
Right.
I suspect that's with the lipids degrading, maybe breaking down the
Yes,
fatty acids.
it could be. It could be. As I said, what I have done is to blanch and then freeze.
Okay.
What I found with that, however, was that the ackee, but then ackee I have at home here now, because I have a tree outside. That ackee is what we call the butter ackee.
Yeah.
Right. So when I blanch and then freeze, it comes out terribly soft. So what I realized was that the freezing was impacting the texture. So I now just freeze and go straight to a stir fry.
I see.
Yes. So
All right.
maybe that's why I am not picking up a difference with freezing then blanching, because I don't blanch this ackee after I have frozen it.
Yeah, I was thinking that if you have lipid degradation, then
You might
be
have a taste change.
getting fatty acids, you know,
Yes.
and that should give it either some off taste or a little bit more.
But
sour
maybe
taste
because I'm seasoning up mine so much, I don't know. Perhaps to try it without actually before one has added anything to it, any seasonings or so.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I find a difference. Yes.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maraj. I mean, in terms of how it is now, in terms of being packaged in the tin, it obviously is scalded or blanched. I'm not sure what's the difference between the two, and then placed in the tin. What are in terms of export, what's the likelihood of just freezing it alone? How much more feasible is that as opposed to what currently obtains in terms of the tins?
Okay, with the tins, because there is the issue for Clostridium botulinum, the tins undergo very intense inspections. Right now, persons are exporting ackee to the US, basically in their suitcases. Each time I go up, I freeze some ackee, I take it with me. When I was going to LSU, there were no issues with taking the fresh fruit across the border, simply because it was out of pod and it was not, I guess it wasn't, for them, it's not processed. So I believe that if it is not canned and it is placed and we can demonstrate that the hypoglycemia levels are well reduced, that once it's not canned, that intensity of inspection should decrease, because currently there is no issue with carrying the fruit itself, the pods, across the border.
But from an export standpoint, from a standpoint of, you know, a manufacturing standpoint, is that feasible to just freezing and exporting? That's a feasible option as opposed to?
Yes, it is feasible, because you can export in refrigerated containers.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Refrigerated container.
Okay, you spoke about additional studies as it relates to hyperglycine content as well as texture. Yes. Do you envision you doing that in the future, or is that Dr. Thompson who is going to do that work?
It's something that from the time of the project I am interested in pursuing. Perhaps because in part there was a slight disappointment in not being able to do that. What I found was what ackee I could take back home I had a problem bringing into the country because I was told I then needed license from the Ministry of Agriculture to be able to take them in. So that was one of the things that impacted our ability to do the hypoglycemia test. But yes, it's something that I would be interested in completing, because for me, it would be completion.
Right.
And yes, as the opportunity presents itself, then I would.
Okay, okay, not a problem. All right, I am not seeing any comment. Well, I'm not seeing the chats. I guess there are no comments in the chats, and I'm not seeing any questions. No hands as far as I can see from the audience. So I think it
Well,
all that I can do now is to really thank you so very much for being with us, and thank you. Oh, Dr. Thompson, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Sorry for the late arrival. I think I got maybe the latter half of the presentation. First of all, to Ereca, Ms. Peart, this was one of the first projects that we had tried once we had started the FAPT program, and in a sense, Ms. Peart and her fellow student who went to FAP, they were guinea pigs, and we really had several challenges. Can you imagine taking 50 pounds of Ackees through Miami to LSU on on transit, which took, how long did that take, Ereca? Probably about 6 hours?
About that,
And
yes. Yes.
And those were the good days. And then turn up at LSU to have this work done in 3 weeks. I mean, it really was a big ask, but Ereca survived and she was able to, produce some results. I must say that, we still have an opportunity to complete some of this work. Yes. In addition to which, we certainly appreciate all the resources extended to us by Professor Satterville at LSU, and we still remain in contact. But if I may just add a bit of further context to this question and the topic of the research. Jamaica continues to be the leading exporter of Ackee to the US, North America, to UK. There are increasingly other countries that are getting involved. Domrep, Haiti, I understand, some activity out of Central America. I think it's Costa Rica, and even some countries in Africa. They're looking at this product. The fact is that they're all going to the same market, our diaspora. We are the ones that consume this product in the volumes that make it such a success. Now, the issue really is that a lot of the regulations preventing easy access to the US market, to North America, relate to two issues. One, hypoglycemia, and two, the fact that it's canned. And in canning, because of the low acid nature of this particular product, it then presents a challenge with respect to the thermal process. And that thermal process is severe. As many of you may know, if you buy a can of Ackee, especially in the States, having been produced in Jamaica and shipped on this rocking vessel, by the time it reaches the state and ends up on the shelf, you're probably talking, maybe it's less now, but you're probably talking about at least 6 to 8 weeks after production. And the quality of the product at that stage is far inferior to what it is that we are accustomed to at home when we pick it fresh and consume it. So looking at alternate technologies to deliver a product to our market, and in particular to look at technologies which are accessible and which also represent the opportunity for Ackee to be a crossover product. And by crossover, we mean a product which goes beyond the diaspora and begins to target the market in the US of converted Americans who have been to Jamaica and who have consumed what looks to them like scrambled egg. No, this is an important development and an important, a significant potential for this crop. So really, you know, as correctly stated, this is preliminary investigation, and I hope that in the not too distant future, meaning, you know, within the next year, we can in fact, you know, continue to pursue this. The reality is that, well, the COVID has actually affected, you know, some plans which I myself had to pursue, but I'm not using COVID as an excuse. You know, we just need to move beyond this point and act on some of the opportunities that present itself. It would also help if we got, you know, some amount of sponsorship for this work. But substantially, you know, this project is still alive. I mean, there's a question of whether, well, why not just simply freeze it and ship it? That is an option, but based on the freezing technology, which is available, that is cryogenic freezing versus slow freezing, which is what would happen when you stick it in your freezer. You have the opportunity to preserve the textural quality of the fruit with cryogenic freezing. Certainly some of the preliminary results from this study suggest that we have the opportunity to retain the color. There's no significant loss in the ascorbic acid content. And further, we haven't had the opportunity to do any of the taste tests. And hopefully in the next couple of months, you know, we're going to be acquiring some capabilities for further sensory work. But to answer the question, you know, is this project alive? Does the opportunity still exist? What are the, you know, potential for growth of this market? We still believe it is quite significant and is worth investing in.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much for that.
Just to add to that, Dr. Thompson, that indeed at the end of the project, persons were didn't express interest in the information in the corporate world. There was about 2 companies that had actually taken a look at it. So there is.
Yeah, we were courting and we were being courted, but there were other issues.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much for that contribution, Dr. Thompson. So the essence of it is that there is work to be done and there is that need to know more about what is happening and what ways in which we can improve the quality and indeed, you know, expand the market to other persons who have had the experience of eating Ackee, and also to also present it to as a new product to those who may not have had the experiences yet. All right, so I think that that would be about it for this morning. So thanks for all who joined us. Thank you, Ms. Peart, for coming again. Persistence is
Thank
the
you
key.
for the opportunity. Yes.
Indeed, indeed. And so we will sign off in essence until next week. So look forward to seeing everyone next week as our seminar series continues. All right, have yourself a wonderful rest of the day, ladies and gentlemen. All right.